Today, you're going to learn about why burnout isn't the real problem, why it is actually the employee experience, how role clarity, trust, development, and recognition create engagement that actually lasts. So, stay to the end for some actions leaders can use this week. David Cohen is back. He is a businessman and founder of DS Cohen and Associates to talk about exactly that, the employee experience. David, welcome back. How's it
Like
going in the new year, 2026? What's it
2020,
looking like for you?
well, it's starting out warm.
Yeah,
Starting out warm, which is nice, but it's looking good, actually. I'm very optimistic right now. So,
good.
despite what's
Good.
going on in the external world, things around here are going okay.
Yeah, exactly. You got to reel it in and focus on the internal stuff and kind of quiet the noise.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to talk about the employee experience today. So, why don't we start here? Leaders talk a lot about employee engagement and burnout. So, why is the employee experience the real driver underneath both of those?
Well, the employee experience is a result, employee engagement. Let's start again. Employee engagement is the result of the employee experience.
Mm,
And what do I mean by that? The employee experience is based on how I'm treated. So the way am I working in a psychologically safe place? Am I doing something that's meaningful and purposeful from my point of view? Do I feel it? Do I feel that I make a contribution to something bigger than myself? And once I have that feeling, then I feel positive about myself. Now, think about this. I mean, the employee engagement has been associated with foosball tables and parties and gamification and all this other stuff. But if your manager has torn a strip off of you or has embarrassed you or has told you something you didn't want to hear, and then you go to one of these employee engagement experiences, what's the first thing you talk about when you get home? Not that you had fun at this experience and the food was good, though you might have liked it. What you're talking about is your relationship with your manager. So
right.
the employee experience is based on what has been years ago was called the employee value proposition. What am I able to give to the organization? The organization give to me, and we meet in the middle. So it was sort of a concentric circle. And here's the things that we can give. Here's the things you can give. We're happy about it. We feel good about it. So the employee experience is what is going to drive employee engagement. And the employee experience starts with the interview process. And how you approach that person is sending a signal to that person on how they're going to experience your organization. It's part of onboarding. I mean, people think, once you're hired, you get onboarded. No. Once you have an employee experience, it's only after you sign the contract and you start working here and you find, you get your hall pass and find out where the bathroom is. No, your employee experience, your onboarding begins with how the organization first contacted you and
Mm,
and how did they treat you and was the manager show up on time or the manager have an excuse for being late to the interview. All that has an impact on people either consciously or subconsciously. And if they join an organization where they've been promised a certain experience and that experience doesn't happen, no matter what you do, you're not going to have a positive employee engagement. So employee engagement is fine. People spend lots of time on it. They spend millions, billions of dollars on employee engagement surveys, and people get, if they ask the question, see, if you ask a question a certain way, you're always going to get it's the answer you want to get. You can manipulate the question to be what it is, but does it really matter if you have a best friend at work? It might help, but is that going to make it a positive employee experience engagement? No. It might make it a better employee experience, but not an engagement. So if you are looking for find out, are your people going to stay there? Are you going to retain people? Are they going to feel like they're not burning out, that they have something to contribute? Then you have to focus on what are your values? What are their values? Do they align? What is their purpose? What is your purpose? Does it align? And do you feel like you're giving them the support and the tools to do their job successfully? And are you recognizing them as the individuals who they are? That'll build a positive relationship and increase productivity and increase retention.
Right. So why do people think it's everybody says I'm burnt out? I think I've heard that a million times, like especially at the end of last year. Oh, I'm burnt out. I can't wait for holidays. Where is the burnout word coming from?
Well, I think there's two places that's coming from. One is that people are being asked to do more with less. So
Okay.
a lot of organizations have right-sized, downsized, or otherwise gotten rid of what they consider staff they don't need. And so therefore they now have to do more with less. The expectations are greater. Like one organization I was working at, um, the manager used to have like a Monday morning, so bring in donuts and have a morning get together on Monday morning where they just talk about the weekend and talk about social things, just get to know each other as people. And that's not even possible anymore at this organization because they let so many people go and they have so much to do that's like you can't take any time for yourself. And so one problem is people are leaders are thinking about the bottom line and forgetting that people produce the bottom line when they're working happy. So now they're
Yeah.
worried, I cut staff, I'm supposed to get better productivity, I'm not getting it. Well, maybe if you didn't cut staff, you get better productivity. Uh,
Mm,
so they're burnout from that. Expectations are high. I think they're also burnout from there's a lot of fear that's associated with all the press that everybody's talking about. AI is replacing jobs. That, is my job going to be replaced by AI? Probably not. AI might might cause certain jobs to be done differently or certain jobs to be done that they don't need somebody to do, but there'll be other jobs. And so people are feeling you know, upskilling has become really important. So organizations that are investing in upskilling their people and giving people the advantage and the knowledge that they can do things at work and will be successful, those people are not burning out because they know they have a future. They know there's something positive, even if it's not with that company, it's a transferable skill and knowledge. So burnout is coming just, I think the whole pressure on people, a lot of uncertainty, people not investing in organizational leadership, not investing in people. I've been following for years what are the top priorities each year for HR and what are CEOs most worried about. And one of the things that's always on the list is a lack of leadership pipeline. But then you look at what was the first thing that was cut, the learning and development budget.
yeah.
So no wonder you don't have a leadership pipeline. You're not investing in it. And so those people are seeing there's no future there, where they see that another cause of burnout or frustration is when people reach a certain level of an organization, there's a ceiling because above that level, they have a tendency to bring in people from the outside who might be qualified, might not be as good, but are not as committed to the organization, don't know the culture that well, cause issues. And the person who should have been promoted is feeling, overlooked, or as to paraphrase Arlo Guthrie's Thanksgiving song, they feel rejected, neglected, and dejected. And so that's going to cause burnout. That's going to cause frustration. And it's really sad because the research shows that when senior people are promoted from within, they stay longer than the people that come from the outside and produce greater financial results than the people that come from the outside. So I still don't understand organizations think they have to look elsewhere to find senior people when they have good people inside the organization that should be nurtured and grown. And
Yeah,
that would kill burnout. That light a fire under people.
definitely to be seen and heard and recognized. I think those are the three. When I think of being in the corporate world in a role where I was had the potential to move up, but had leaders who weren't seeing me, and I felt like I had to really kind of close off who I actually was to fit into their box and be quiet and not be loud and not really shine and it was exhausting. It's like you're like, what do I do? And you feel like you're walking on eggshells, essentially. And then when in it was my specialty, and there was like really high level meetings, and I wasn't being invited to those meetings. That's a way to turn someone away real quickly. Like I was like, okay, so you're not seeing my value. You're not seeing how I would add value to this conversation. So where am I? Where how do I fit into this organization? It's a really crappy feeling. And exactly then one foot slowly moves out the door and then it's I just yeah, I felt exhausted.
Yeah, and I call it retirement in place. People give up and they're not as productive, they're not as engaged, they're not as willing to offer help to other people. So they kind of retire in place because they
Uh-huh.
don't see a future. And that's going to happen a lot in this coming year because there's not as many job openings at senior levels. There's not a lot of there while there's movement, there might not be a lot of movement in where they're looking for. So they'll spend a lot of time, on Indeed. I remember one organization I worked for, the IT team um, would scan where people were using the internet. And on Monday morning and Friday afternoon, most of the internet time was on external looking for search job search engines. So they closed down those access to those.
At the job site, like people were looking for other jobs Monday morning and Friday afternoon.
Yeah, on the job.
Wow.
So, they kind of like said we got to cut this off. So they did. But, it's you got to be aware now. You look at it the other way around. People give rewards as a way of saying I'm recognition because you talk about recognition. Recognition becomes a habit. It becomes an expectation if it's extrinsic. So if you every year get your bonus, every year you get a certain recognition, which is an extrinsic recognition, over 3 or 4 years, you expect that the next year, whether you've earned it or not.
Mm,
So it's a short-lived thing. It's not something that's going to sustain motivation. It's not something that's going to give you the fire underneath you to want to contribute more because people become used to it, and it's not something that is going to motivate you to go to the next level. Managers need to find out what the intrinsic motivators are of people. What do people really care about? And it's really interesting because I often say to executives who I might hear from somebody uh, in the organization that an individual has done something outstanding or has done something unusual, and they've gotten really no recognition for it. And people are upset they got no recognition for it. And so I'm talking to leaders and I say, when's the last time that do you know about this event incident? And they'll say, yeah, I heard about it. And I said, well, what have you done about it? And they say, well, their managers told them good things, I'm sure. And I said, well, why don't you leave your office and walk to their area and see them in person and say thank you? And that thank you is more powerful than a bonus. That thank you means everything. I was working with an oil and gas company in Alberta, and in northern Alberta, there was an incident and these two young employees did some incredible things to prevent a major safety issue. And I said to the CEO who was going up there for a meeting, I said, seek out those two guys and say thank you in person. And he did. And he got a lot of joy out of it in seeing the way they reacted with such shock and
Right.
like appreciation that he saw them and he heard them and he recognized them and he was aware who they were. That was more meaningful to them than anything else. And another incident I had with many, many years ago with Air Canada when I was working with them. This is quite a few years ago. There was the TWA flight that crashed outside of Halifax, and people were scrambling to get to Halifax, family, friends, reporters, et cetera, et cetera. It was late at night. And so the reservation group really didn't know what to do. So they offered the lowest possible airfare to everybody. And even though the airfare wasn't published, and they got front page headline news on what a great thing Air Canada had done the next day in all the newspapers, which was more PR than they could ever buy. And at the end of the year, the head of um, reservations at the annual their employee meeting asked the two women that led that to stand up and get an appreciation for it. And when I was talking to them, they said they felt so good they would have. One of them actually said, "I would have worked for 3 months for free after that." So that
Wow.
simple recognition and appreciation for doing something unusual, something that probably you shouldn't have done, but you knew it was the right thing to do. It lived the values of the organization. That gave people the motivation to do more. But when you simply say to them, you know, here's a bonus, here's an extra $1,000, and the government takes half of it anyhow. So well, I got $500. What am I going to do with that? But that appreciation, I hadn't, I've had so many of these stories over the years where people simply had letters of recognition from the CEO hanging on their wall because they said that was their proudest moment. So when leaders hear of these unusual events that people do, where they've gone out of their way and lived the corporate values, saying thank you in person to that person, sending them a handwritten note has more power for, engagement and retention and motivation than sending them a bonus check.
Right, right. Let's talk about something that is still up for debate that's kind of happened after COVID. It's the return to office.
Um,
So from an executive lens, what should leaders actually be thinking about and how do you feel about that? I heard two women talking about it in the yoga change room the other day, about how they're going to be sent home and they're going to be the only two in their department that are going to be working from home full time. And I was interested because I didn't really know that was still a thing, but it sounds like it's still a thing.
I'm working with one of my clients here in Toronto, which has been remote working for 2 or 3 years before COVID. Very successful. They are now thinking about bringing people back to the office because the Ontario government's bringing people back. TD Bank is bringing people back. A lot of the organizations are coming back, and there's a positive to that economically. I understand that it's better camaraderie in the office. It's people that have small shops um, in the area have a better possibility of not going out of business. So there's a positive side to it. But the negative side is people have realized that I can be just as productive or more productive by working it remotely, not necessarily at home, but remotely. And that therefore I am able to take care of things, take my son, daughter to the dentist, do whatever I have to do. And I still find time to get my work done. Now they're taking that away from me. So I'm feeling left out. In fact, the union for the public workers here in Toronto were protesting yesterday this 5 day a week return to work policy. I think that going back to that employee value proposition, where people are supposed to sit down and talk to each other about what can I do, what can you do, where do we meet in the middle. I think that going back to work 5 days a week, pulling that band-aid off without, you know, giving them any way of loosening it up first, is really hurting people. Some people enjoy going back to work. Some people don't enjoy going back to work. Everybody will understand, you have to come back to work as a team 2 days a week, or you have to come back 4 days a week, but you get your choice of which day you take off. But you still have to do work. You still have to be available. You still are doing your thing. You're just doing it from home. That's, to me, is there needs to be a compromise, and there can't be a demand. I mean, this one organization I work with, um, 2 years ago, I guess, when COVID was officially over, they demanded everybody back to work. They were one of the first companies. 10% of their population left, and among those people that left were some of their best people. So is that really worth it? Is it, or are you going to have to retrain people? You're going to have to bring people in. I think that I don't see the purpose of going back to work. I mean, I work from home. I've always
Mm-hmm.
worked from home for God knows how long, because if I'm not gonna, I'm supposed to be at a client most of the time, not working at home. So, there's no need to have an office. My office is at home, where it would have been anyhow. So uh, that's an unusual situation, but I think people need to realize that COVID has taught people that they can be productive, successful, they can be engaged. You know, there's always a concern that, well, if you work from home and those are at work, your manager for promotions and recognition is going to see the person more often, that's there. So I have to go back to work if everybody's going back to work. If the manager is any good at their job, they're going to stay in touch with you, whether you're remote or in person. They're going to see the quality of your work, whether you're remote or in person. So it's really up to the organization to make a decision. I don't agree with going back to work full time. I don't think that, unless people want to come back to work. There are certain jobs where, like at hospitals or air traffic controllers, or, you got to go back to work. There's no choice. You made that choice by choosing that occupation, that you're going to be at work full time. And so that comes with the territory. But where it's not required, I think a compromise is a better way of doing it, or easing them into, this year it's 2 days a week, next year it's 3 days a week. So when people know it's happening, when people have a voice in making it happen, they're going to be more successful at embracing it. It's when it's
Mm-hmm.
imposed on them out of the clear blue. We've been working at home for 4 years now. Nobody's complained about it. Organization has grown. CEO's gotten his or her bonus every year. You know, everything's good, but all of a sudden one day you wake up and say, now you got to go to work. Uh, no, it should have been a discussion about it. There should have been a way of easing into it, good communications, you know, align it with the values of the organization, the business plan, make people understand why there's a benefit for going back to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much, people's quality of life improves so much with the ability to work from home, without the commute, without finding parking, with like that commute and being in traffic is really hard on the nervous system. Not only that, but you get more rest, and you're able to prioritize your health. So I feel like humans these days want to feel better, and part of feeling better is having that freedom. And if you're still getting your work done, I don't see a problem with it. And I could see, I don't know, my heart was just racing thinking about that, being told you have to go back 5 days a week after not being back. That would be really challenging.
Yeah, it's been a shock for a lot of people because they weren't prepared for it. And, people don't mind change as long as they see a benefit for the change,
Or it's
and as long as
gradual.
they've been prepared for the change. But for one day some executives stand up and everybody's going back to work and nobody saw it coming, it's going to shock a lot of people.
Yeah. What about policies? How do rigid policies impact trust and engagement?
Well, again, that goes along with the policy. Is the policy something that makes sense? Is the policy something that, um, I always say policies are guidelines. There's always room for a reason why you can get around the policy. Um, and, working with one organization, they had this approach: the further you away from head office, the easier it is to get away with breaking the policy. They
Mm,
felt sorry for the guys that were located in the head office city because they were too visible. But when you were on the other side of the country, you can kind of do your own thing. Policies are in place. Again, if the policy makes sense, there's a logic to it, there's an explanation. Certain policies, like in safety procedures, are there. They make sense to everybody. They're not policy, they're standards, and the standard can't be broken. So I think that policies, again, like the policy of returning to work, there's got to be a discussion around it. There needs to be a process around it where people feel they've had a voice, where people feel that they understand it. They know why it's happening. They know that this makes sense. Uh, it's not just because somebody somewhere said, this is the way we do things. How many employees have I heard around the world that, complain about, well, I hate hearing that's the way we do things around here, because that means there's no innovation, there's no creativity, there's no alternative ways. Uh, or so I think that policies are great. They give structure, but they have to make sense.
hmm Absolutely. Let's talk about psychological safety and trust. How quickly is trust broken when leaders don't do what they promise?
A nanosecond.
Yeah.
I mean, it's real simple. If you promise B A and you do B, and there's no reason why you did B, and I can't see a reason why you did B just because you wanted to do it, or because it was beneficial to you, I will not trust you again. Uh,
Yeah.
these, like the story you were telling about how you would prepare work, they'd present at the meeting, you weren't there. I mean, that's a great way. One of the things that people hate is when somebody else takes credit for their work. So
Yeah.
leaders who, don't give credit for the work, don't allow people to make those presentations, they're losing trust real quick. So trust is easy to break, but I always say when trust is lost, it's almost impossible to regain. So,
hmm
there's a lot of consultants that, talk about building trust. And I always am concerned, if you're building trust, that means trust isn't there. There's got to
hmm
be a reason that trust isn't there. And trust isn't there because something went wrong.
hmm
And if people, and a lot of leaders don't have the courage to admit they made a mistake. And so if you're not going to admit you made a mistake, or you said something wrong or did something wrong, if you're not going to own up to it and take accountability for it, ownership, you're not going to regain trust. So and that's why when I work with organizations of values, I say they're the foundation for trust. They're the foundation for psychological safety in the organization. Those are the ground rules that are non-negotiable. Those are the things that cannot be broken. You cannot do things counter to those things, because as soon as you do that, you lose integrity.
hmm
So your integrity is based on living up to all the values, not some of them some of the time. We're not all of them except for one, but all the behaviors that define the values all the time. And as soon as you don't do that, as soon as you make an excuse for it, I don't care if it's because we're making more money, because the competition did it, whatever it is, as soon as you break that trust, you break that promise, because your values are a promise of the way you're going to treat people. So
hmm
breaking the trust around values, I don't think there is a way to regain those.
Yeah.
That's my
Agreed.
opinion.
If a leader isn't acting with integrity, I can't respect them. Like I remember back in the day when there was like smoking, people smoked a lot. There was like a designated area and it was like talked about all the time. If you're gonna smoke, you have to smoke in this area. And one day I saw the boss smoking like near the front of the doors. And I was like, ah, that's interesting. So why are they not following the rules? And then it just like slowly I just started to lose respect for that leader. Because he wasn't like preaching, he wasn't doing what he was saying, and he was
Yeah.
doing the thing that he was telling everyone else not to do. So it was like I had zero respect for him in that moment. And then again, yeah, it's so hard to gain that back. Like I wanted to, but a part of me was like I had this wall up when it came to that person.
Yeah. The thing is, leaders have to realize that there's responsibility with leadership. And one of the responsibilities to role model the promises the organization makes. And one of those promises is to live the values without exception and without excuse.
Hmm.
So if there's a policy in place, you better change the policy if you're going to break it.
Yeah.
Um,
All of a sudden, everybody can smoke near the front doors.
well, de facto, he's given them permission because,
Literally.
I mean, if he spoke by the front door, why can't I? And so
And you
I'll
know what?
just
It
follow
could
the
have been
leader.
like a brain miss. It could have been like he was in a rush and he got out of his car and it could have been, but because it was talked about all the time and he did it and it was so obvious and I was like so confused by it.
Yeah, and that's why you got to be careful. Leadership has responsibility,
Big
and
time.
leadership has responsibility that is not about skill and knowledge. Leadership has responsibility. It's about behavior and
Hmm.
about role modeling the behaviors and the environment that you want. And getting back to what we talked about, that role model of those behaviors will create the positive employee experience, which then will lead, if there's a positive employee experience, employee engagement is going to fall in place. But if it's not there, that's the reason why people had to start with this employee engagement anyhow. Employee experience was not very positive, which is really interesting because the employee experience even had a forerunner to it, which is were the employee satisfaction surveys. And if you look academically, historically at it, the employee satisfaction surveys were actually more informative than the employee engagement surveys. So, are you satisfied with work? Well, if you're not satisfied with work, you're not going to be engaged. So,
Yeah.
it's sometimes we evolve things, and HR is its own worst enemy by constantly giving new names to things, so people get confused. What is this? So let's stop naming something new every year. Same thing, new name, new acronym.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Hashtag. So we talked a little bit about recognition and how recognition often misses the mark. So why do those generic rewards fail to engage people long term? Why is the thank you so much more powerful?
Thank you. It's personal.
Mm,
It says I've been recognized. Uh, Everybody got the bonus. Everybody got, tickets to a ball game or whatever it might be. Uh, we all had the pizza party.
mhm,
But when the boss sent me that handwritten note and it was just to me and nobody else, when the boss said to those two ladies, stand up because you did something that was fantastic, even though it was against the rules, so to speak, they were recognized for doing something that was positive for the organization, was gave them recognition to the organization. They were attached to it, they were identified with it, and they were thanked for it. So, they took a risk. I think when people take a risk and do something that really is unusual, they did it because of some intrinsic motivator. So
mhm,
don't hit them with an extrinsic bonus. Hit them with an intrinsic response. Focus on what's going to make them feel good about themselves and what's going to bring the best out in them. And, the reward, Pavlov had the dog salivate, but after a while, stop salivating. They don't tell you that part. Stop salivating because they realized the reward wasn't there anymore. People are
Mm,
not much. If that financial reward's taken away, you know, people are just going to respond accordingly. They're motivated because of the reward. You take the reward away, there's no motivation. They're motivated because of the intrinsic reward. It doesn't come that often, and they're going to keep working for it because it's meaningful, it's personal to them. So, you know, I have this crazy notion that, you know, the budget for the year for salaries is always built in. What if people hit bonus, what the bonus is going to be?
mm.
I've said to people, why don't they just give people the total amount up front and say you get to keep your job if you do your job instead
Yeah.
of holding that carrot out and say, here's your bonus at the end of the year if you do a good job. Um, just, you know, treat people with a little bit more dignity and say, this is what your job's really worth. We're going to pay it. You don't have to go through this game of hitting certain numbers, which we want you to hit up front. Put those numbers out there. Say, hit these numbers, you get to keep the job. Don't hit these numbers, you're not going to keep the job. And get away from this bonus game that people play. But
Mm.
I think that's too radical for many people.
Yeah. So let's talk about 5 things leaders can do this week to improve employee experience. What are some things that leaders can do to improve their employee experience?
They can, first of all, not only live the values and role model them, but they can recognize and give recognition to those people that live those values, especially in difficult circumstances. And when
Hmm.
pressure was on, especially if pressure's on to do something that you could do and get away with by violating the values, but they don't. They do what they need to do. Leaders need to find a way of recognizing them either through a written note, going and visiting them, um, give them that recognition that they want. The second thing that people need to do is leaders need to do is understand that if they are going to make changes in the organization, change is a process. It doesn't have to take a long time, but it has to be communicated. People need to be involved, at least have a, a sense that some of the people in their organization that they respect were involved in making that change, making things happen. I think that's really important. I think that leaders have to, if they make a mistake, they have to be human. They have to have the humility to understand who they are. They have to have the emotional intelligence to understand how they're feeling, how other people are feeling, and respond according to the other person's feelings, not just their own. So I think that's important. That's 3 things. I think that organizations have to allow, give people the opportunity to grow, whether it's upskilling or giving people development opportunities. There are leaders at every level of the organization, and they should be given the opportunity to develop their soft skills, which are the hard skills, but their soft skills, they should be given the time and the resources and support to develop as a leader in the organization, and to see that they can not necessarily move up but move laterally, that there's opportunity in other places in the organization they can pursue their interests. And I think that people need to be treated as individuals. People need to, because if you have that emotional intelligence, you know what they need. And some people, treating people fairly or treating people equitably doesn't work because not everybody needs the same thing. Fairly
No.
means some people do it some way, some people do another way. So this treating people equitably, I think that runs a risk of, you know, I don't need that. I don't want that. I'm not interested in it. Um, Treat people fairly according to what they want, what they need, will also go a long way.
Yeah, I'll add one too. I think clarifying roles. I think that really helps with the employee experience. So when
Yeah.
someone knows exactly what their job is, then they know what they need to do and they're not confused or there's no gray area.
Yeah,
I've
we
had
can do
roles that were clearly defined and I was like, I just felt so uneasy because I'm like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing.
yeah, we
Look
can do a whole
busy, you know?
we can do a whole section on role clarification.
Yeah.
Because there's role ambiguity, there's role conflict, there's all sorts of things that when people have this lack of understanding of their role, they either have things drop through the cracks because they thought somebody else was going to do it, or they're doing what somebody else thinks they're supposed to do. And
Yeah.
so they say, why are they doing it? I'm supposed to do that. The other person says the same thing. So, yeah, role clarity. I work with organizations a long time, and role clarity usually comes up in every organization I work with. So, really having a true role clarification exercise, and that doesn't mean going through the job description, it goes way beyond that. So, yeah, that would go a long way with a lot of companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for this really engaging conversation. So, what I got from it is that strong employee experience is built through clarity, personal development, flexibility, trust, and that meaningful recognition. And then engagement is essentially naturally resulted from that because the employee feels seen, heard, and is clear on what they need to do in the workplace. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. You know,
Yeah.
employee experience, a good, positive, strong employee experience results in good, positive, strong employee engagement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks, David. It's been amazing. Happy
Thank you.
2026. I'm excited for the next one. Maybe we will do that one on role clarity and teach everyone about how to make their roles really, really clear in the office so people know what they're doing, not what
Yeah, that'd
they're
be interesting.
yeah. I remember being in a role where I was doing too much and then getting in trouble for overstepping. And I'm like, but you guys never told me what to do. So that could be a good one for the next episode.
Okay, we can do that.
Beautiful. Well, have a wonderful new year and I look forward to the
You
next
too.
one. Do you have anything else to add before we go?
No, just you can visit me at my website, which is sagltd.com. And if you're doing any hiring, or even if you know somebody's looking for a job, my book, Selecting the Best, will, especially for hiring managers, will ensure they hire the right person, just not hire a warm body. And if you're looking for a job, you'll at least know what the person on the other side really wants to hear instead of going to AI and preparing some off-the-shelf answers, give some human answers. So buy the book, Selecting the Best. I think that'd be helpful for ensuring there's a positive work experience.
Amazing. To learn more about David, we will have that linked in the show notes. Check him out at DS Cohen and Associates at sagltd.com, which again will be linked in the show notes for you guys. Have a great new year, everyone. Get those employees engaged. Bye for now.